I'll be talking about my company, Electroninks. And so our background is we're a unique company. I as well am a material scientist. That's my educational background. And so we offer high-performance conductive materials, specifically for the B2B markets for integrating the supply chain, but as well have a unique direct-to-consumer product in the form of the circuit scribe pen. So we've received Series B investment. We're located here in Austin, Texas, have a large manufacturing and R&D facility here. And so I won't sort of belabor the company background, but so one of the things I'd like to do as far as understanding and contextualizing our company's offerings a little bit better is, so we have our industrial offerings. Specifically, we really focus a lot around EMI shielding, display solutions as well. And then I have additional materials that go into platinum and gold. But one of the big things that we've noticed with printed electronics in general is there's a large but relatively disparate ecosystem of materials that makes it difficult to compete with traditional manufacturing techniques like traditional PCB prototyping, et cetera, because of the way that they're relatively difficult to play with, for lack of a better term. It's difficult to start playing with new materials whenever the barrier to entry is so high in a number of different scenarios. So that sort of informed our decision to have a direct-to-consumer product line in the form of the circuit scribe, which is a rollerball pen. So very simple and very easy to operate. And so we try to eliminate a barrier of entry, typically seen, and then allow people to access sort of this flexible printed electronics, really rich materials ecosystem, and then partner with companies as well that offer unique materials. We are under no illusion that somehow Electroninks will be the end-all of materials providers. We have our own unique materials offerings, but believe the best way for people to understand how to manufacture new items is to give them tools that allow them to work with these materials in unique, creative, low-cost, and low barrier to entry ways. So we did this by launching our own prototyping ecosystem on Kickstarter. Back in 2013, that was a great decision. Nowadays, Kickstarter is a very different platform, but in 2013, that worked very well for us. And it did a number of things, including providing a user-friendly face to our company while we integrate with our more advanced precursor materials into the supply chain, which, as anyone familiar with the materials ecosystem knows, that takes some time and some doing and is a difficult process. So it's nice to have a face of the company that allows everyone to understand to some extent what we do and also allow them to utilize it in a meaningful way. And so I'll sort of play our Kickstarter video, which I admittedly have gotten a lot of mileage out of, but I won't go through this in its entirety here. So has a nice little intro here. I look significantly younger for what it's worth there. So I'll sort of skip ahead here and sort of go over traditional prototyping tools versus just a rollerball pen on paper. So the rest of that is more towards Kickstarter backers, et cetera. But that was sort of how we had the genesis of the brand here, to sort of introduce a simple way to prototype and use electronics for the average user. And so basically how it works is, so we had a pretty successful Kickstarter campaign. We used that money to get all of our non-toxic certifications, get supply chain put in place. What's great is these actual pins that you see are actually, if you're all familiar with the Sakura jelly roll pins we all grew up with, the metallic flake pins, Sakura out of Japan actually makes our pins for us. So it's a very nice, robust pen with our non-toxic internal formulation conductive ink that's aqueous-based. So we allow users to access this all the way down from students who are just learning circuits, so a level of abstraction required isn't there, so a circuit diagram can actually turn into a working circuit versus plugging and playing on breadboards, all the way up to professional designers who already have a good feel for what they want to do and need to understand what an actual flexible hybrid system would look like on paper versus prototyping via more traditional FR4 with copper plating on top, which doesn't really give you a feel for the flexibility and the integration that a lot of what printed electronics value proposition is, frankly. So while prototypes are always useful, if you're prototyping and having to make a lot of compromises, it's still difficult to portray to the end user what the ultimate feel of the end device would be like. So we have a number of basic components that go around power, inputs, connections, outputs, etc. And then we have customized ones that allow you to, that actually act as a very small through-hole connector, so you can actually plug and play your own devices to create a fully functioning prototype. Now, where we found our primary traction is actually led us towards here is more towards the classroom. So it's a very great and straightforward way to teach this. And then we've also gone into retail and other sectors. So here's a create your own drone device. So the drone is actually made out of cardboard using our conductive ink on cardboard. So when you crash the device, the whole point is you learn by crashing. So instead of just chucking your drone that you just spent a decent amount of money on, you just rebuild it and you actually learn something about the product in that process. So we've had a good amount of success being able to take printed electronics as something that's normally been something relatively esoteric and people that are very familiar with materials and supply chain to something they can put in front of a consumer, and not only can they understand what it is, they can directly interact and make something to make it that much more approachable to a broader audience. So jumping into that, as I spoke earlier, we're under no illusion that somehow magically electronics can solve every materials problem there is. Anyone familiar with the materials ecosystem knows how long it takes to commercialize new technologies and new materials and integrate them into meaningful products. So by creating a tool set that's very accessible via rollerball pen and pieces of paper, we feel like this gives us a fantastic platform to build an ecosystem off and collaborate with companies like Ynvisible, where we can make this far more accessible to a larger audience, and then maybe people who want to play with materials that have previously not been a part of the regular prototyping palette when it comes to PCB prototyping or something else for electronics, you can now start to play with displays like Electroninks and do something very fun and engaging there, to where we can give them something, but also allow the user the ability to work with these materials. And then I think the most rewarding things we've seen, especially with the CircuitScribe ecosystem, is seeing what users can come up with in ways that we never imagined, because by giving them a tool set that allows them to build something, the sky's sort of the limit. And we've seen a lot of very unique use cases that otherwise we would have never thought of. There's only a certain amount of problems that we can go after as a company. And so this is one of the things that we released. It was in last year, 2019, regarding one of the collaborations we have ongoing with Ynvisible. So they provided us some thin film electrochromic display modules, and then just using a microcontroller unit in the form of a lily pad here, we were able to run these just by running CircuitScribe lines on paper. And this is just sort of very quick iteration of some fun things that we can do here. So we believe that by incorporating new materials, especially electrochromics, this is an ideal situation of giving the user freedom to express their ideas in a simple way by having an accessible tool set and having a large ecosystem that allows our customers to give us feedback as to what new products could look like based on creative integration of these in simple, straightforward fashion. So we're looking forward to continuing our collaboration with Ynvisible on the co-development of their kits and products, and that has been a very fruitful interaction with us thus far, and look forward to what the future holds there. In addition, on the CircuitScribe side, we have a thin film ecosystem. So we plan to roll out a full sticker ecosystem that goes along with what we already had prototyped there with Ynvisible in the form of an 8-segment display. So while the magnetic components that we have currently work well for quickly doing something in a classroom, if you want to have a working prototype that lasts longer than a 50-minute session or a lesson that a teacher's right there for, maybe you want to take something away in your notebook, being able to do this in more of a plug-and-play sticker format makes a lot of sense. And so all this bundles together and sort of tells a nice narrative of then when we start to move into more complex projects and complex integration, like we see with our industrial materials business, where we do precursor-based materials, specifically our particle-free silver, and then we have gold and platinum as well. So we have very low annealing temperatures, very high conductivity, with a lot of use cases here that plug into cell phones for EMI shielding, capacitive touch sensors, bezel electrodes, antennas, etc. But the whole point is, this is a very difficult place for most users to jump off into. You have to have a pretty good access from a resource standpoint, supply chain, et cetera, to be able to access these. So if we can give users a way to iterate on product designs in a simple and straightforward fashion, we think that products can be iterated more quickly, more efficiently, and then ultimately have better and more creative interactions with the customer as a result. So I'm just sort of going to skip down here to the bottom. And so we're a different type of materials company, and we focus on what we're good at, but we have no illusion that we're somehow this one-size-fits-all partner that provides everything. We really enjoy collaborations with numerous companies throughout the supply chain that make sense, that have unique offerings that really can build a full printed electronics ecosystem, that we can start to approach this from a holistic fashion versus each company just sort of taking off on their own route. So we truly believe that an ecosystem needs to be in place, and the partnerships that we put in place, like that one with Ynvisible, are a step in the right direction for printed electronics and hybrid manufacturing as a whole. Thank you.